Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our homeroom. I hope you are doing well. I am very excited to get into our topic today. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. Just a reminder, if you are listening to this as a podcast, there is a worksheet link that you can click on and download. I also post this on YouTube. So for those of you who are more visual learners, there's a couple different options for you to listen and watch along. All right, so today we are in lesson 3 of 4, kind of relationships 101, all the things that I've learned over these past few years. So if you haven't listened to the other two, the podcast 1 and podcast 2, please make sure to go check those out because there may be some background information that will help you as you listen to this one. So we've discussed in the first episode, we discussed that if we make the relationship with our children our number one priority, all of the things we want for ourselves, our family, our kids will all fall into place. In order to do that, there are 3 steps. The first step, which was the last episode, is we need to provide a balance of power for our children instead of power over. We want to lead with a power with model. The second step is we need to provide a balance of needs, and those needs are belonging needs and boundary needs. They need both of those 2 sets of needs, and that is today's episode. And then the third step is we are going to manage misbehavior by providing their unmet needs. All misbehavior just goes back to some kind of unmet need. So all we need to do if they're misbehaving, we just need to provide one of those 6 needs and then misbehavior goes away. And that is our next episode. These 3 steps are the simplest, most effective ways that I have learned over these past 20 some years that ensures that our children will be successful. We will enjoy parenting because there's less misbehavior, and we will create such a good lifelong bond with our kids that after age 18, they'll still come back to us and visit, and we'll feel that really good connection with these little humans that we created. So let's go ahead and dive into why and how to provide the 6 key relationship needs. All right, today, as I said, we are going to be learning why and how we need to provide these 6 key relationship needs, because when these 6 essential relationship needs are provided, your family will feel better and act better. So it just helps all around. So why are needs so important? And I've mentioned it a bunch of times already in the other 2 podcasts, but in case you missed it, it is because needs drive all of our behavior and impact our success. And that is because our needs are what make us feel good or bad and act good or badly. And then when our needs are met, because we're feeling good and we're making good choices, then we have a chance to be more successful. So those are all tied together. Everything that we do as humans is to get needs met, whether that's in an unhealthy way or a healthy way, but that is the key. So if we can provide our kids needs, then we're going to see way less behavior, and then they're going to have a chance to be successful. So let's break this down a little bit more. So overall, as parents, it is our responsibility to provide needs for our children. That is the relationship we are in for them. And that is because then when they grow up, they will learn how to provide those needs for themselves. But as a child, the balanced relationship that we build with our children provides them that connection, that attachment, that belonging that is essential for our children's survival and success, right? So through that relationship, if we can provide these 6 needs, our children will feel better, and then they will have better behavior. So that is the cycle of how it goes. When our needs are met, we feel good and we have good behavior. When our needs are not met, we can have negative emotions, which means we can also make unhealthy choices. So let's go through a few examples of how this works, and you can maybe try to even relate this to your own life and when you have needs met and your emotions and your behavior that follows as well. So here's some common ones for children. So when we have unmet needs, that equals misbehavior. So for instance, let's say we have an unmet need of play. Play is a really common need for all of us actually, but especially our children. So if we're having the feeling that we need play, but we're not getting that need met, we're going to maybe have the emotions, the negative emotions of boredom or frustration. From those negative emotions, we could have some negative behavior like whining, kind of being needy, clingy, wanting someone else to give us that feeling of play. Or we could get to the point where we're just avoiding responsibilities. I'm sure many of us have been that way when we've been overworked or, just having too many responsibilities. We just need a break. We want a break to play and do fun things, right? So that's a system there. So if we're not getting play, we might feel bored, we might feel frustrated, we might resort to whining or nagging or being needy, and then maybe avoiding responsibilities. Another example is we all have a need for acceptance. If the need for acceptance is not met, for instance, you're not picked for a sports team or you have a breakup or things like that, you may feel hurt or you may feel rejected. Then from those negative feelings, we may make choices to do things like we might hurt someone else, or we might insult someone else. We might even go so far as to enact revenge on someone else, right? They made me feel bad. They put me down. They insulted me. They did not accept me. They rejected me. I'm going to hurt them back the same way. So those are all negative behaviors that come from not being accepted. All right, another good example is security. So we all have a need for security. If we are not feeling secure, if we don't have that need met, we may feel unsafe or we might feel very anxious. From those negative feelings, we may do some withdrawal. We may pull back and just keep ourselves quiet and away from everything because we're too unsafe or anxious for anything. Or we could go the other way where we would try to over control and over manipulate everything to keep us safe in that way. So again, those are negative behaviors that come from the negative emotions when security needs are not met. All right, and then a fourth example today is freedom. We all have an essential need for freedom. If we don't feel like we are free, where it's going to lead to negative emotions like powerlessness or feeling trapped. When we're feeling powerless and trapped, we're going to fight back or defy. So if you're seeing one of your children fighting back, defiance, you're getting into lots of fights, chances are somewhere in their life they're feeling powerless, they're feeling trapped, they're feeling like they don't have control. And it's because they're not feeling that need for freedom. So again, negative behaviors come from negative feelings, which come from unmet needs. So it's really going to be fun. In the next episode, we're going to go into specifically what misbehaviors line up with which needs, and that's when it can get really fun. So next, let's go into how to provide these 6 needs. What are the 6 relationship needs, and what are the details of those, and how can I make sure I'm providing those for my kids so that they are getting those needs met and they're feeling better and then they're acting better. So let's get into that next. Okay, next let's get into the how and what of providing the 6 relationship needs. How do we make sure to do that correctly, and what are those 6 relationship needs? So how we need to make sure we are providing the needs appropriately is by providing a balance of belonging needs and boundary needs. So what I found is like all of the needs that we need to provide our children as parents fall under those 2 categories. So we have belonging needs, which is the foundation. Those are the lovey-dovey connection, acceptance, all of those needs. And then we have boundary needs because our kids also need limits and structure. Now, belonging needs, research has said over and over again that belonging are actually the most important needs. So we talk about those first. They are the foundation. Although boundaries are really, really close second. Like those are really important that our kids have structure as well. But success comes most when we have parents who love and accept us and respect us and provide us those belonging needs. So let's talk about those first. So in order to provide belonging needs, you've got 3 things to do. You want to connect to your children, you want to respect them, and you want to encourage them. So what does it mean? What do those mean? So let's talk about connect. So in order to connect appropriately, you're going to do 3 things. You're going to get to know them, you're going to communicate wholeheartedly, and you are going to create togetherness. So by getting to know them, I literally mean just that. Get to know them, get to know their interests, get to know their friends, even maybe get yourself involved in some of their interests. Oh my gosh, our kids love it when we love the same things they love, when we love their music, or we love their video games, or their activities that they're doing. So show enthusiasm to those things that your kids love. Really get to know what those are. Ask them their opinions on things. And as they get older, what are their thoughts on some big world current events and things like that? Like just get to know them, get to know their ideas, and that really makes them feel accepted. You also want to communicate wholeheartedly, and that means to communicate openly, actively, and kindly. So openly, you want to make sure you're being vulnerable with them. You're sharing your mistakes, you're being open with them as much as you can. You want to make sure you're being an active communicator. Are you putting your phone down when they're telling a story? Are you being involved, asking follow-up questions? I know our kids like to talk a lot, but if you can try to, as often as you can, put that phone down, make that eye contact with them as they listen. It really makes them feel valued. And then the last one is kindly. Like, are you being kind with your words? It means so much to kids. I remember every time I'd ask my kids, what do they most want out of their teacher? They almost always said to be nice. Kids just really value kindness and niceness. And then the third part of connect is to create togetherness. And this is kind of the fun thing. And I used to do this with my class too, but you can do it with your family, is creating a family bond. Do you have inside jokes as a family? Are there certain rituals that you have when that holidays or every Friday is ice cream day? So figuring out ways to create a bond as a family also leads to connection. Okay, so that is how to connect. You're going to get to know them, you're going to communicate wholeheartedly, and you're going to create togetherness. The next part of belonging is respect. Our children need us to validate them, to build trust, and to resolve conflict calmly. So by validate them, I mean not only validate them, but also their emotions. They need to be told that they are okay as they are. They need to be accepted and not rejected. So validating them and their feelings is super important to show respect for them. The second one is to build trust. Are you keeping their secrets? Are you not going through their things? Are you asking their permission before you, go through their phones, things like that? So are you building trust with them, or are you breaking trust? So with every action that you do with your children, you want to make sure it's something that is building trust and not breaking it. And then the third part of respect is to resolve conflict calmly. We want this in our peer relationships, whether those be our spouses or with our friends. We want, if there is a fight, if there is a problem, we want to be able to talk that problem through and come to a place of where we're all apologizing and get to a place of forgiveness. So repair on the other end when there is going to be conflict, because there is. You're never going to be perfect. There's always going to be some kind of fight. Are you able to come together, respect each other enough to talk it through and repair that in a calm way? All right, so that is respect. The third part of belonging is to encourage our kids. And this is because, again, life is tough. There will be ups and downs. When there are the down times, are you able to, 1, believe in them, 2, support their goals, and 3, be patient? So when it comes to believing in them, our kids, we should be their biggest cheerleader. Are we showing faith? Are we showing that we believe in them, and we are holding high and positive expectations for them because we know that they can do it. Even if they haven't shown us that they can, believing in them can often be what makes them be able to do those things that they didn't think they were able to do. We also want to make sure that we're supporting their goals, not our goals for them, but our children's goals, finding out what their goals are and supporting those, maybe even giving them baby steps to help them achieve those goals, in any way that you can, maybe signing them up for a class that they might be interested in, things like that. So supporting the goals that they have for themselves is super important. And then honestly, probably the most important and one of the hardest areas of all the belonging is to be patient through those dips. Our kids are going to make mistakes. How are you handling those mistakes? Are you patient? Are you supportive? Are you showing them that's okay and you believe in them and life will go on and you've always got their back? So having that growth mindset, which is knowing that it's okay. They're kids. They're going through a growth process. They're going to make mistakes and they're going to make bad mistakes. Even things like bad grades, that's okay. It's part of the learning process. Are you there on the side saying it's okay? How can I help you? What do I need to give? What do you need help with? Those are the things you can do to make sure you are patient with them as they grow and make mistakes. So again, our belonging needs, we need to connect with our children by getting to know them, communicating wholeheartedly and creating togetherness. We need to provide respect by validating them, building trust, and resolving conflict calmly. And then we need to encourage them by believing in them, supporting their goals, and being patient through the growth process. So those are our belonging needs. let's go on to boundary needs, which are also super, super important. These are the structure that our children need to find success. So the 3 steps for providing boundaries: we need to make sure we establish boundaries, we need to enforce boundaries, and we need to reciprocate boundaries. So establish boundaries, what does that mean? It means you need to first determine what your boundaries even are. Especially new parents, this can be so tricky. I remember not knowing what I wanted the tech limits to be, not knowing what time bedtime needed to be, not knowing how much candy my kid could have in a day. So a lot of it is our own, like we don't even know what our limits are. So determining what your boundaries are and your limits are is super important. Once you've done that, then you need to make sure to communicate that to them. As often as we think we communicate it to them, you would be surprised how many times they have to hear it. And then not only that, but how many times they're going to do it wrong. So there's a lot of training and retraining. If, for instance, bedtime is 8 o'clock every night, but then you go on vacation and then bedtime is 10 o'clock at night for a few days, you're going to have to take some time when you get back to retrain them back to an 8 o'clock bedtime. It is a constant process with rules and structure. They are never going to remember them all the time. And I think I read somewhere it's like, now the research says it's like 59 times before we actually remember something and do it automatically. So, they need lots of reminders and lots of training. Okay, so that's the first step, to establish those boundaries. Next, you want to make sure you enforce the boundaries. They're going to overstep them. And if you don't enforce and make sure that they know that that is not acceptable, they're just going to keep pushing those limits. So to enforce boundaries correctly, we want to be concise, we want to use consequences, and we want to hold our own personal boundaries. So be concise. This has a lot of fun strategies in it, specifically like our kids don't always need a really long lecture. Sometimes it can simply be a no. Sometimes you don't even need to use words at all. When a kid in my classroom would be tapping a pencil incessantly on their desk, trying to get attention, I might go over and just take the pencil from the student, place it on their desk, and it's a key to a clue to let them know that that's kind of distracting. So sometimes we don't even need to use our words. So being very concise in our language, sometimes just pointing to something without having to go on why is your towel on the floor? It's on the floor every other day. Just point to the floor and say towel. And sometimes that's enough. So being concise is a good, helpful way. Using enforceable statements too, we'll get into that later on. That's also a really great way to enforce boundaries. Using consequences. I know a lot of really great parenting experts are mixed on consequences, and it's because consequences can so closely resemble punishments. It is a very, very fine line. However, I do promote using consequences. They helped me so much. You just have to learn how to do them correctly, and that's a whole nother episode I will get to at some point, because if you can do consequences correctly, they're great. You can only use consequences with overstepped boundaries, not with anything else. They need to be related, revealed in advance, respectful, and consistently applied. And if you do those things correctly, consequences really help with overstepped boundaries. And the last one is just holding personal boundaries. Are you saying no to things when your needs are also not being met? Mothers especially have a really hard time getting our own needs met and doing what we know is right for us if we have been overextended. But it is very important as parents that we hold our own personal boundaries. Our kids are going to be fine if we say no to being able to go watch them at a sports game because we're just overwhelmed or sick or just can't do it. So holding personal boundaries is also a really important part of enforcing boundaries. All right, the third step to boundaries is reciprocating boundaries. So in a relationship, not only is it important that we have our own boundaries, it's important that we respect the other person's boundaries. They also have boundaries. And yes, our children, even though they are young, are also allowed to have their own boundaries and limits. So how can I make sure to reciprocate correctly? You're going to give a lot of voice and choice to your children. You're going to share tasks with your children, and then you're going to promote independence. So giving voice and choice, as often as you can give choices to your children, as often as you can have their opinions involved in whatever it is you're doing, the more motivated they're going to do that, and the less likely they're going to defy those things. So giving them choices, even just limited, small, little choices, helps so much in that way. You also want to share tasks. Give them an opportunity to try things outside of their comfort zone. They may not do it perfectly, which goes back to encouragement, right? Being patient, because they might, when they go to pour the milk, it might go all over the floor. But you want to start giving them tasks, having them help out imperfectly around the home as often as possible. And then the third thing is promoting independence. And this is huge when it comes to schoolwork. As young as you possibly can, you want your children to own their own schoolwork. It's a great way to promote independence and to give them that feeling of perseverance and ownership over their schoolwork. All right, so the 3 areas of reciprocating boundaries: we want to give voice and choice, share tasks, and promote independence. So those are our 6 key relationship needs. We want to make sure under belonging, we are connecting with them, respecting them, encouraging them, and again, providing boundaries by establishing boundaries, enforcing them, and then reciprocating our children's boundaries. And I like to think of this as like maintaining a home. I love analogies and metaphors, as silly as it is. It just helps me understand it. And this is the way it really clicked for me when I started to think of it this way. So if you think of it like our home, everyone is living on the first floor of our home, right? If we're all on the first floor, it's because we all share the same space and we're all valued equally. And that is our balanced power that we talked about last episode. We're all on equal footing. We all have the same value. We're all here on the first floor. Then the parents are going to provide the foundation. So if you think the foundation of your home, and in that foundation, in that floor plan, we've got connection, respect, and encouragement. That is the foundation that our children can grow from. And then we also make sure we provide a structure to the home. So we have to provide those walls. Those walls give our children boundaries, but they also give our children space in their own room, right? So the structure of the home is the boundary needs. And that is how we provide balanced needs. We provide the foundation and we provide the structure. Then what we're going to get to next episode is we maintain the home. Right? If we don't maintain the foundation and the structure of our home, we're going to start seeing cracks. We're going to start seeing leaks. That is what misbehavior is. All misbehavior is, there's a foundational need not being met, or there's a structural need not being met. If we can identify which one it is, and then we can caulk that, right? And fill that in, then the leak and the misbehavior will stop. Okay, let's get into the always optional homework for the week. Now that you know a little bit more about those 6 relationship needs, number 1, which belonging need do you feel that you provide really easily? But which one do you struggle with? Is it connection? Is it respect? Is it encouragement? So which of those 3 do you feel like, oh yeah, that one's easy. I do that one really easily. But yeah, putting my phone down when my kids are telling me a story for the 300th time today is a little challenging. So maybe think of just some of the ways that you feel like you could provide more belonging needs, and then identify the ones where you're really doing a good job. And then number 2, which boundary need do you provide easily? And which boundary need do you struggle with? I know for me, this was my learning process. It took me several years to get to the point where I could enforce boundaries correctly. And that's why I'm so excited to share a lot of those tips with you, because if you're anything like me, like, I don't know, for some reason, I just really struggled with giving limits and structure and boundaries and saying no and, enforcing consequences. It was really tough for me, but I've got some really good tips on how to do that. So do you feel like maybe you need to establish the boundaries? You need to maybe determine and communicate those a little bit more? Do you feel like, yeah, using consequences is tricky for me, so maybe you need to be better at enforcing? Or reciprocating boundaries. Do you feel like your children probably could use a little bit more independence, a little bit more power in their own lives? Then that's just a great way to identify that you might need to reciprocate boundaries a little bit more. All right. This is a good place in the podcast to make a very important note, and I will try to remind you all of this often as I go through the podcast. Parenting is a really, really hard job, and I promise you are already doing a really, really good job because you love your kids, okay? So try not to be too hard on yourself as you learn information and you think back and think, oh, I wish I had known this when my kids were younger. I did that too, because I didn't get a lot of this information until my child was a little older. Even then, even when I started doing all of this with my son, I still messed up because we are human, we are imperfect, and that's okay because we love our kids and there is no better success strategy than love. So you're in a good place. It's okay to be imperfect. Your kids are going to be fine. So keep that in mind as we go through the lessons throughout the podcast. Don't be too hard on yourself. I know it's so tempting to do that, but you're good, so don't feel bad. All right, that is it for this week's episode. Again, please contact me if you have questions or if you're trying this out and something is working or not working. I really would love to hear from you. My email address is up on the screen. And again, it is my name, kristentame@gmail.com. Please make sure to like or subscribe. Share with parents. If you're hearing things that you love and you think would be helpful, please share. I'd love to get this information out to as many people as possible. It just really helped me, and I hope it helped you. All right, thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.